Good evening, everyone. This is Kimberly Collins, the CEO and founder of 10 Marketing LLC. Welcome to tonight's Hangout, the journey of meeting of the minds. Tonight we're going to be talking about our very own Jennifer Foxworthy's book, Tomorrow My Sunshine Will Come, Memoirs of Women Who Survived Domestic Violence. Tonight's major topic is domestic violence. So without further ado, I'm going to introduce you to my panelists for tonight. The very first face I see is none other than Ms. Elena Jimenez, founder and CEO of Execute Your Destiny. So glad to have her with us tonight.
Hi, everybody.
Also back with us tonight is Ms. Jennifer Washington, who we are so glad to have her back with us as well.
Hi there. Thank you.
Last but not least is none other than the host for tonight, Ms. Jennifer Foxworthy, CEO and founder of Inspirationally Speaking and author of Tomorrow My Sunshine Will Come, Memoirs of Women Who Survived Domestic Violence. If you have not gotten this book yet, I encourage you to run out to Amazon. I will put the link at the bottom of this video in the About box so you can get your hands on this wonderful, wonderful work of art. So, without further ado, I am going to turn the hangout right over to Ms. Jennifer Foxworthy because we have tons upon tons of information to get out to you tonight. And hopefully at the end of the show, those of you out there that may be in domestic violence situations, you will find a way to immediately free yourself of that situation. So without further ado, none other than Ms. Jennifer Foxworthy.
Thank you, Kimberly. Hello, ladies. It's so great to be back every week seeing your beautiful faces. Like Kimberly said, this is about the freedom of releasing from a domestic violence or an abusive relationship. And there were many points that I wanted to make in order for this to provide not just an educational or insightful opportunity, but to inspire and give hope for those still trapped in their abusive nightmare. So I want to start off with the definition of what domestic violence is, because I know myself, I was naive to what it was. Therefore, I didn't think it could happen to me. I didn't realize how the signs developed. Domestic violence is a pattern of coercive behaviors characterized by the power and control of one person over another, and usually in an intimate partner relationship. And it could be physical, it could be psychological, it could be emotional, verbal, sexual, and or economical. And within my book, actually, it's my story and 5 other ladies' stories who had the courage to share their story. You will see a gamut of many of those scenarios of the physical. The psychological could be isolating you from your friends and your family. The emotional is tearing down your self-esteem of, you're ugly, you're fat. Anything to just make your self-worth plummet. That's emotional. Verbal, calling you out your name. Instead of baby or sweetheart, it's the B word, or other nasty derogatory names. Sexual. Just because you're in a relationship is similar to rape. If no means no, sometimes you get tired of, I don't know, in one of my stories, having it every night, or being forced having sex in a position that you're not comfortable in. And that's basically what that comes down to. Doing things that you're not comfortable with sexually. And so you can kind of use your imagination with that. Economical. I have seen it all too often, even in the military, where you have the military member and you have their spouse who is a civilian. The military member, all the money is coming into their account. So they're controlling the flow in and the flow out. They may even withhold what job or what command where they work at on base so that their civilian spouse cannot find them if there is trouble at home. And I've answered those phone calls while on duty before, and it just shocked me that all she knew was to call the operator of the base. She knew that he worked at, but she didn't know what command. She didn't know really what he did as a job. All she had was his name. And so economical abuse is where you're withholding, like you're giving someone an allowance. They might need hygienic items or clothes, new underwear, socks, something, and you're holding it over their heads in order to make them do what you want. So domestic violence is just not putting your hands physically on someone, punching them, slapping them. It takes many forms, and that's why I really want to start out with the definition. So next, I wanted to go into who it affects and the statistics. 1 in 4 women will be in an abusive relationship in their lifetime. Almost 1 in 10 men will be in an abusive relationship in their lifetime. That is absolutely mind-blowing to me. And if you don't believe it, say if you go to church or any type of organization, just take a look around the room and say if there's maybe about 15 women. And if you mentally stood them up and you maybe went down the line saying 1, 2, 3, and every 4th person, they stood up or stepped forward. That is the reality of how many women at that organization or church or at your job has dealt with in a domestic violence relationship in their lifetime, either in the past or still. And then the same with men. However, it's 1 in 10. So you just go, you count down the line, and every 10th man stand up or step forward. Domestic violence knows no boundaries. It does not care if it's your 65-year-old grandmother. It does not care if it's your 12-year-old teenage daughter. If they have the ability to be in some sort of relationship, intimate, what have you, because yes, our young girls, our young boys are being intimate at a young age. Puberty is happening younger and younger. Then they have that opportunity, unfortunately, to be in a domestic violence relationship. It knows no boundaries. And it could be young, like I said, young, old, rich, poor, straight, or homosexual. So it happens in the homosexual or the transgender community as well. So I just want to get that out there. That is not a straight or a low-income epidemic. No, because in my book, there's several women, different ethnicities. We have different ethnicities, different upbringings, different economical statuses in our families. But there was always one thing for sure, and that's where I will explain a little bit later of how did we get into that relationship. So what I want to make a point of, as a child growing up in their environment, they're young and impressionable. Their minds are still developing. So domestic violence also affects the witnesses. And so that child, if someone does not pull them out of that dysfunctional environment and sit them down and say, this is not the way to cope with your problems. Alcohol and drugs are not the way to cope. Taking your anger out on your loved ones is not the way to cope. Then that pattern, that cycle is sure to repeat. It is essential for us adults to stop being self-absorbed in what we're going through and think about the children. because they mimic everything that we do. They absorb everything that they see and hear. So for our boys, if they are consistently seeing daddy beat up on their mom, call mom out of her name, withholding things from mom, treating mom pretty much like garbage, they'll either grow up one of two ways, which is repeating what daddy did because they see it's normal and that all daddy had to do was say I'm sorry, bring home some roses, and mom kisses him and everything is back to normal for a day or two until the next thing that sets daddy, and it could be mommy that is the aggressor. So don't get me wrong, I'm using men in this example, but women are aggressors just as well as men. It's just that the statistics of men being the victim are a little bit more, 1 in 10. Or on the other hand, that little boy will say, when I grow up, I'm not going to be anything like my father. That's what we hope, that they will see, oh my gosh, he almost put my mom in the hospital. Or he did put my mom in the hospital. Black eyes, bloody noses. I don't want to be anything like him. But more than likely, the pattern will repeat itself because there's not a healthy environment of coping skills. And for our young girls, it goes the same way as far as either becoming the aggressor or to where her self-esteem is so low she believes this is how women are supposed to be treated, and that this is love, this is attention. So it is very important to nurture our children in a healthy, intact environment. It's not enough for parents, oh, well, we're together just for our children. If mommy and daddy are not in a healthy communicating relationship, it bleeds into your children. And you can deny it all you want to, oh, they don't see us when we argue or this, and that. But if you are not sitting them down and explaining things to them or showing them better examples, they will walk in your footsteps. And I'm going to just keep it real. Also, I want fathers to know is that it is very essential to tell your little girl that she's beautiful inside and out. And and the same thing for the mothers, to tell the boys, that they're handsome and that they're worthwhile, and building up their self-worth, their self-esteem, their self-love, which we had talked about in the previous hangout, and I'll go more into that as well. It is vital, absolutely vital, because it's hard to change a person once they're in their 20s, their 30s, their 40s, to change that mindset of, I love myself. I am not going to put up being called out my name. This is not love. This is not healthy. So in order to not repeat that cycle, we have to stop being self-absorbed, and we need to do right by our children. It's not enough to be physically present in the household and just giving a little bit of child support, say if the parents are separated. That's not enough. You have to mentally and emotionally nurture your child. So my next point is, and ladies, like I said, if you have any questions, anything, I'm just going to flow with it, but just, interrupt me, ask questions as you see fit. My next point that I wanted to make is, if you find yourself in a domestic violence relationship, I pray that the light bulb comes on to where you can survive intact with your life. Now, I live in Maryland, and the statistics that I have are from July 1st, 2010. So unfortunately, they're not necessarily updated, but this is just to give you an idea how real and deep things could be. From July 1st, 2010 to June 30th, 2011, there were 43 deaths of women, children, and men in the state of Maryland as a result of domestic violence. 43. So when we are not educating ourselves, when we are not growing up in a healthy environment, when we don't acknowledge what is going on and seek help, there are many, and you may know some, who did not survive, that they paid the price with their life because either they didn't get out when common sense told them to, or just got stuck in the law with a restraining order that legally was not enforced, or just something. But 43 people just in that year perished, and that included children. So my next point I want to make, like I said, I just want to keep it real and hit it home for you. My next point is how did we get here? How the heck did I end up in a domestic violence relationship? I was in the military, and I'm only going to give you a little bit of tidbit because I want you to get the book. I considered myself smart, above average grades, very conscious and aware. I'm making my way as an independent woman in the military. But what I was dealing with, that I didn't give myself permission to be real with myself, is that I was dealing with low self-esteem. And it stemmed from, it's one thing where other ethnicities are calling out your name or making fun of you of your features. But when it's your own kind, it hurts. And when it's your own kind and it's male, the very gender that you want the attention and the love and acceptance from, and they're making fun of the very features, my lips, my nose, my dark skin, that they possess, that their mother possesses, it threw me for a loop. And my self-esteem, it plummeted. It took a turn. Because I just, as a teenager in high school, I just couldn't wrap my mind around, I could look like their mother. Is this how you would make fun of your mother? So again, as adults, what are we teaching our boys? What are we teaching our girls? That it's okay to belittle your own ethnicity, and then we wonder why we have so many problems within our culture. So as I was going through my teenage years and into my 20s, I found myself looking for love and acceptance. I wanted so much to feel beautiful. So while I was looking for an emotional fulfillment, of course, guys are looking for their sexual desires to be met. And they know how to run game. They know how to tell us women all types of stuff to get our attention. And I had guys that complimented me on the very features that I felt insecure about. Oh, girl, you got beautiful lips. Oh, girl, you look so fine. You look this, you look that. And I'm like, giggling and thinking, oh, he really likes me. He's really digging me. There could be something to this, because I was looking for possibly a long-term relationship. But what ended up, I was getting into relationships that I had no business being in. And I stayed longer than what I needed to, whether I was waiting by the phone, hoping that they would call, whether I broke my plans off with my homegirls to be at their beck and call, or, sad to say, the midnight phone call, hey girl, can you come over? The booty call. Yeah, the booty call. So after these horrible relationships, I told myself, okay, enough. I got sick and tired of being sick and tired. This is not cool. And so I took a break. And then after a while, I thought it was okay to try and date again. And that's when, through a mutual friend, I hooked up with my ex-boyfriend. So it wasn't immediate where the hitting, the name callings. No, there's a honeymoon phase. Everything is going great. Intimacy is now a part of the equation, spending time together. But now, the guy, he punched me. So it's like the guy wants to know. He tries. You give him an inch and he'll take a yard. They do things to see if they can get away with it. So it shocked me. Couldn't believe it. And of course I'm like, get out of here. I don't want to see you again. But like most women, we want answers. We're a very inquisitive bunch. We want to understand, why did you do what you just did? I thought you loved me. And so the story goes on from there. And for the other ladies in my book, similar situations, low self-esteem due to various circumstances, a series of circumstances that happened in their childhood that shaped the way they felt about themselves. And that's how we became susceptible to being in these domestic violence relationships. And I told myself prior to this relationship, I'm not going to let nobody put their hands on me. I know doggone well that that's not cool. And I was Ricky Lake at the time was on, and I'm yelling at the TV, girl, don't let him put his hands on you. And before I knew it, Jennifer Foxworthy, Jennifer Dowry at the time, was in that relationship. And not only was I going through a personal issues in the military, I was going through my professional issues of busting stereotypes and discrimination. So before we judge people, you have to have the facts in the background. Why does she dress so scantily? Why is she so loud and boisterous? Why is she so recluse, so isolated? More than likely, there's a story there. Why are they not able to interact socially? If you read my book, you'll get some of the answers. And there's no one size fits all. But as I wrote this book and received the stories from the other women, it became also clear that there was a common denominator of low self-esteem, of feeling like we couldn't do any better, that we were not deserving to have any better. I was lucky I didn't have children to my ex-boyfriend. But there are women who shared their stories who had children. And that brings on a whole different dynamic of why you're not able to leave immediately. Number one, can you afford it when you have 3, 4, 5 children who need a roof over their head, and you're cleaning someone's house. How are you going to put food on the table? So sometimes the woman will, for the sake of her children, will subject herself repeatedly to the abuse. And unfortunately, that becomes a pattern to where the children are seeing that dysfunction. And it goes back to my last point of who witnesses it, who it affects. So self-esteem is having confidence in one's self-worth and abilities. Having respect for yourself. That is extremely important. So your self-worth, personal value. What do I believe? What is it I believe about myself? Do I think I'm beautiful inside and out? Am I smart? If a person does not know these things about themselves or acknowledge these things, then they will be susceptible to get into a domestic violence or dysfunctional relationship. It's all about what do you believe about yourself, instead of finding acceptance and confirmation in someone else. Once we stop looking for someone else to validate us, we'll be so much better. So we're well off. And what we think about ourselves transfers into how we act and behave. So if we don't think we're worth anything, we'll unconsciously seek the bad boy. We'll unconsciously dress provocative and do and our mannerisms are unbecoming, maybe unladylike or ungentlemanlike. So how we think about ourselves transfers into how we act and behave. And then, importantly enough, is that self-love. Love for life and respect for life. Know that your life is worth living to the fullest, the way God desired it to be. Not isolated, shamed, humiliated, called out your name, black eyes. That's not what He desires. That's not the life that you want to desire. Who wakes up and says, yeah, I think I want to be in a relationship to where I get beat on today? Nobody does that. But you have to be conscious and aware of your self-worth and loving yourself. I also want to go back briefly to who is affected. I mentioned, rich, poor. It knows no boundaries. Those in our Asian cultures, family and loyalty mean everything. So just think of those countries, where religiously, the woman is submissive, walking 10 feet behind the man, considered property. Already, that's the religious or legal dynamics in that country. And I just use the Asian culture as an example because they keep everything within the confines of their home. You don't put your business out there. Community, family, loyalty means everything. Can you imagine how many of our Asian brothers or sisters, more so probably sisters, are in these horrible, despicable relationships? And I'll give you an example. I have a dear friend. She's Asian. Her dad has been whipping up on her mom for over 40 years. Her mother refuses to leave her dad. For what reason, I have no idea, and the children cannot understand it. They have begged their mom they've grown up seeing this behavior, have begged their mom, leave. She ends up in the hospital. You even have, the cops saying, you need to leave this man. But for whatever reason, she sticks by him no matter what, believing that he needs her. So how did that affect my friends and her siblings? They were afraid to get in relationships. They were serial daters or they never stuck with a person for more than a month or so, or if at all. It has gotten so bad now that the oldest, her oldest brother, lives with her mom and dad. He has now put his life on hold because just to ensure that his dad doesn't kill his mother. Since the mom won't leave and believes that the dad just absolutely needs her, she submits and deals with this for over 4 decades. And now it has affected her children. So it's just not a black and white thing. Like I said, it knows no boundaries. So I want to go into my 4th point, warning signs ignored. As you read my book, you will find that there were clues, there were red flags from the beginning, whether the person was sarcastic, whether they didn't, maybe they had prior relationships that were abusive but were ignored, or they thought, the friends surrounding him thought it was funny, and that, oh, that girl is dumb, she's staying with him. And then all of a sudden you find yourself, you're dating this person, and now you're repeating the same situation. Or the belittling, or wanting to spend your money vice their money, now putting you in financial debt. So there were warning signs, but we unfortunately ignored them because we thought we could change them. We were trying to prove to them that we were not like the last woman in their life that maybe did them wrong. And if we loved harder and stronger, that they would come to love us for how we want them to love us, for who we are. And unfortunately, that's not reality when you're dealing with someone who is aggressive and abusive. And then you throw in the mix the other warning sign, alcohol and drugs. As I wrote my book and I'm reading all the other ladies' stories, alcohol and drugs was a big factor of the blow of when you could maybe pretty much time it. If they came in the house reeking of alcohol, you knew something was going to go down. Or if they were just so depressed and all they want to do is play video games, or as soon as they came home from work, there's beer cans and bottles surrounding them, you're about to deal with something. I would encourage anyone. I have nothing against drinking socially, occasionally. But if someone is putting them down like it's water, you need to watch out. You need to watch out, because the littlest thing will set them off. You sneeze wrong. You ask a question wrong. Don't let any bass get into your voice. You're going to have problems. So so I hope by that point, it explains why we stay, especially if there's children involved, why we ignore the warning signs. But you have to have a will to survive. And don't think that it can't happen to you. Like I said, it's very gradual. There's a honeymoon phase. They're not going to show you their true colors right from the back. So my next point is about my book. I'm going to hold up this gem. Kim has held it up in the past in the different segments. Tomorrow, my sunshine will come. Memoirs of women who survived domestic violence. Once I was sick and tired of being sick and tired, crying myself to sleep, feeling so low, having my feelings hurt, physically, emotionally, mentally, in turmoil, I had prayed to God. He gave me direction. I took it. I didn't look back. The more I shared my story with women, I opened up, the more stories I heard back saying, I can relate. Me too. Or I was. And I was just taken back like, oh my gosh, I'm not alone. Because I stayed in my relationship for 5.5 years. Didn't really tell friends and family what I was going through. And I best not really tell family, because mom and dad would have been on the plane over to Washington State looking for him, and now my parents would have been in jail. So that's another thing I want people to know is, well, why don't you say something? Why didn't you tell me? We don't want our loved ones to get in trouble, because we know that you're going to look out for our best interest, take revenge, and go at this person. Now, they're not worth it. And now I lose my parents or loved ones, friends and family, because you're in jail or just something crazy happened. And it just promotes more dysfunction. So unfortunately, we suffer in silence, because we think that we're the only crazy ones to be in this relationship, to that no one can relate. And crazy enough, there are many people who can relate. Like I said, you go back to the statistics, it's 1 in 4 for women, 1 in 10 for men. And for the men that is the victim or the one being abused, you think of their ego. How can you tell your boys that you're getting whipped up by your woman? Who wants to admit that? Who wants to admit that they got it wrong again, or that they got themselves in a horrible relationship and they don't know how to get out? So that's how the book manifested itself, is when I finally had the courage to share my story, I found that other women were able to relate. And I was like, there's something to this. And I'm like, if I felt alone, humiliated, and ashamed, I can imagine the numerous other women who are still living in their nightmare, afraid to get out. And so this book is to provide education to the non-abuse society of how does one get themselves into this relationship and stay for so long. And then also for those who have been abused or still being abused, to provide that hope and inspiration. So this book takes many different facets. And I'm extremely blessed of the feedback that I'm getting. I've had so many women come up to me and say, thank you. It has inspired them to live their life to the fullest. I had one friend who shared that she was in an abusive relationship, and I asked her, well, how did her healing process go? How is she now today? And she admitted that her healing process plateaued and that she was still denying in some facts that, oh, he was a good guy. You know, he really wasn't that bad. But once she read my book, her healing process skyrocketed. And she was just really grateful. So it's those stories that let me know that I didn't write this book in vain. Even if it was for my healing, that there are other people who are getting something from it. And funny enough, I have a lot of men who are purchasing my book as well. Not only are they wanting to support me, but they know someone, whether it's a cousin, their mother, and so they just want to know more about domestic violence, educating themselves. So I'm getting both genders. I'm getting, you know, men and women who are purchasing this book, and it's having an impact on their life. So now it brings me to the process of dealing with a traumatic experience. As I went through my journey, and even now as I survived, and I'm living happily in a beautiful marriage, you know, my child, my stepchildren, I'm living my purpose and my passion. I realized that there are 3 phases to dealing with a traumatic experience, and this is something that I stumbled on. Healing, restoration, and forgiveness. And at one point or another, we have talked about these different phases in our hangouts. You know, the healing and restoration after an abortion, the freedom in forgiving. Healing, restoration, and forgiveness. You have to go through the first phase, the healing. The healing comes when you talk about your situation, when you acknowledge that it happened. Because when we talk, we release. When we hold it inside, it's toxic. Mentally, emotionally, and physically. You have to release. Even if it's just getting counseling, you have to talk about it and acknowledge instead of denying. The restoration portion comes, and you have to go on these steps. You cannot get to forgiveness without going through the healing and the restoration phase. The restoration is rebuilding your self-esteem, your self-worth, saying those affirmations in the mirror morning, noon, and night if you have to, of I am beautiful, I am worthwhile, I am deserving of love, and love does not hurt. That is the restoration. It's becoming whole again. Because if you can remember, through the dysfunctional relationship of domestic violence, you were broken down to feel like you were nothing. So you have to build yourself back up and say, I am something. I'm amazing. I'm smart. And I don't deserve this. And you go through these phases once you get out of the relationship. The third one is forgiveness. And I'll start this off by, I heard this quote, is by Nelson Mandela. Resentment is like drinking poison and hoping it kills your enemy. And I'll say that again. Resentment is like drinking poison and hoping it kills your enemy. If you are struggling with forgiveness, I need you to remember that quote. Nelson Mandela was locked up in prison fighting for freedom and democracy for over 27 years. 18 years of that was in Robben Island. He came to a point of forgiving and accepting his journey that he even befriended one of the prison guards. If that's not the epitome of forgiving, I don't know what is. Also, forgiving is not for the abuser's sake, it's for your sake. It was for my sake. Regaining that control back. And I'll have to tell you how I got to forgiving. I finally put it in my mind and heart. God just came at me. I was searching the internet. I needed some confirmation, even after 6-7 years of being out of that relationship, that my ex-boyfriend was miserable. I wanted to know, was he in the obituaries? I was checking obituaries. I was on Facebook or social media trying to figure out if he still existed, if he was divorced, if either to come across a picture to see if he was fat and bloated. I just wanted some type of confirmation that he was miserable. And then it dawned on me of, this guy isn't even paying me any attention. 6-7 years have gone by. He's gone on with his life. And why am I worried about what he's doing? It came at me like a ton of bricks of, Jennifer, you're still relinquishing your control to this fool. He's not even in your life anymore, Jennifer. And I was like, I became not so much stalking or obsessive, but it was just, it was taking up time or energy that could be spent elsewhere. I forgave other people who did me wrong because what I broke it down to was, more than likely they were broken spirits. And broken spirits lead to other broken spirits. And that there was a pattern that they dealt with. It goes right back to our children witnessing the dysfunction. If you don't have a positive role model to teach you how to be a man or a woman or what pitfalls to stay away from, you'll fall in them with cement shoes. Forgiveness is not easy, it's not comfortable, it's not quick. But it is essential to free yourself from the burden of feeling anger, that resentment, that animosity. No one deserves that much control over you. And when you take a step back and you realize that, then that journey to forgiveness can happen. And I'll share this with you. This past Saturday, I was at a book signing at a library, and I had this gentleman approach me, pulled me to the side, and I guess the book festival was advertised in a weekly paper. And as he was going down, he seen my topic, domestic violence. So he sought me out, and he was like, I need to know how to forgive. And I was just like blown away that, again, someone is seeking me out based on what I wrote, that there's something to this. I could smell the alcohol on this man's breath. That was his coping mechanism. And he went on to explain how his father had did some horrible things to him as a child that he just finds it so hard to forgive. That he didn't come right out and say it, but I believe maybe his father molested him quite frequently, because he said that he got pleasure out of doing him wrong. And unfortunately, this exists. And he knows, that the Bible says, turn the cheek, you're supposed to forgive. All these things about forgiveness. But every time he tries, he just can't, he's unable to bring himself to forgive his father. And I explained to him my journey of how I got to forgiveness. and that it wasn't easy. But I said, have you sought counseling? And he said, oh, plenty of it. But I know that, number one, he probably needs to go to Alcoholic Anonymous. And at the end, I'll go over some resources. But he needed a support group. He needed to continue with the counseling. But right now, that alcohol was his best friend. That was how he copes with the disgusting feeling he feels about himself and about his father. And I said, when you forgive, it's not about your dad. It has to do with you. You have to free yourself. Now, it's easier said than done, and everybody's path is going to be different when it comes to forgiving, especially the severity of the traumatic event. So I'm not going to lessen anyone's situation. I'm not saying that domestic violence is worse than sexual abuse or rape or what have you. No. It's your journey. It's your situation. And so I gave him the best advice, and I said, you know what? Because I'm a spiritual person, I said, God is going to be your answer. You have to turn it over to him, and you have to pray about it, but you also have to put in the work. God is not going to, just snap his fingers and then you're cured from your resentment. No, you're going to have to do some healing, restoring, and then forgiving. You cannot get to one without doing the other first. In domestic violence, I have the courage to share my story because I acknowledge that it doesn't define me. It doesn't make me that I'm stupid or ignorant or anything else. It does not define me. It's just a part of me. It's a part of that happened in my past. And that's how I'm able to get to this point. I went through the healing. I went through the affirmations. And it's still, I'm a work in progress. And then also with forgiveness, I had to admit to myself that I'm a flawed human being. And that if I did someone wrong, I would hope and want to beg for their forgiveness, so we can move forward. So it's about that process. Don't cheat the process. Be real with it. And I just want to share Romans 12, verse 17 through 19. Do not repay anyone evil for evil. Be careful to do what is right in the eyes of everyone. If it is possible, as far as it depends on you, live at peace with everyone. Do not take revenge, my dear friends, but leave room for God's wrath, for it is written, "It is mine to avenge. I will repay," says the Lord. So I just want to share that with you dealing with forgiveness. Also, we have to acknowledge that as flawed human beings, we had put our trust in another flawed human being, hoping that they would have the morals and ethics to treat us right. And that's not always the case. That is not always the case, that everyone is going to have the same morals and values and ethics to do what is right. They're flawed human beings. So resources. There's a national hotline, National Coalition of Domestic Violence. 1-800 number. 1-800-799-SAFE. 1-800-799-7233. That's National Domestic Violence Hotline, available 24 hours a day. Also, every state has an organization or an agency that deals with domestic violence. You can go to the national website and then you can navigate from there to your particular state. Maryland is Maryland Network Against Domestic Violence. And on their website, I was able to order brochures. Many other states, you can download their pamphlets and brochures. So many resources to get yourself the help. Also, if you are looking for support, there's crisis intervention, there's emotional support, advocacy and legal assistance, housing and safe accommodations, that are temporarily will put you up, child care, say if you have to go to a court hearing against your abuser. There's a whole gamut of, a closed mouth will not get fed. You have to open up and speak out and say, this is what I'm going through and I need help. I want to survive. My life is worth living. So if you need child care, there's ways to get that child care while you attend to your business. Or if you're looking for an apartment or going to a job interview, because you're now picking yourself up from, you're starting your life over again. Also, there's access to community services such as transportation. If you don't have a vehicle, there's the bus, there's taxi. If you can't afford it, I'm sure these agencies, while you're trying to get back up on your feet, they're going to help you out monetarily somehow. I know they're not going to leave you hanging. Like I said, and there's women support groups where they meet weekly or maybe once a month. It's kind of like Alcoholics Anonymous or narcotic, the different anonymouses. There's healing, restoration, and forgiveness. There's a process when you are supported by those who can relate. You draw from their strength. Maybe you learn from their insights of how they dealt with something. So that's what I wanted to share with you, those different points. I pray that you're a little bit wiser, a little bit more educated. Say, wow, I did not know. Inspired, providing hope. I hope that this has been beneficial. So ladies, I open it up to you. I know we don't have that much time, Kim, but the floor is yours.
I'll go last since I'm going to be closing out the show. Jennifer or Arlena, either one of you have any comments you'd like to make?
I just want to thank you, Jennifer, for opening up your life that way. And as you were talking, I was just looking at your name, and it's funny how things happen in life. That you would have worthy in your name, and you definitely walk in that, and you wear that, and
God bless you.
yeah, I really appreciate it, and I know it will help to set a lot of people free. Because, like you said, the more people expose, I want to say, these things that have been hiding in dark places, and the shame of silence, when people know that you have come through and other people have come through, the stories are what the testimonies are, the stories, and that's what really triggers other healing, because it resonates. So I commend you and for putting it in a documented format where people can, digest it as they, can allow themselves at their own pace, So I encourage anybody out there who is watching this hangout to go out and purchase that book that Jennifer Foxworthy has so diligently written and shared with the world, and pass on the good work also. In doing that, you will help others. So thank you, Jennifer.
It's my pleasure.
Elena, hold on 1 second. You are muted. I can't unmute this thing. Can you unmute yourself?
How about that? Can you hear
There
me
you
now?
go. Thank you.
I had seen earlier where it had gone muted, but okay. So as I was saying, Jennifer, thank you so much for opening up and allowing yourself to be vulnerable by sharing your story with us, because it allows anyone who's listening to you to realize that regardless of their situation and circumstance, there is hope and that their situation can be better if they allow themselves to have faith and perseverance and move into a different situation. I think that you did a lovely job of providing us with a lot of really good information to help, you know, folks to move into a more positive situation should they be in a situation such as the one that you were in. I took down a number of notes, but really I think because you covered everything so well, I really just want to close with a statement that I had heard probably about a couple weeks ago. It was really interesting when I heard it. It was on forgiveness. It defined forgiveness as letting go of the hope that the past could have been different. And as I was thinking on that sitting here, I added that in addition, it's also the belief and the hope that our present and our future can also be different than what our past was. So I think that if for anyone who's in a situation where they're still holding on to the past and the pain of the past, I would encourage them to open their eyes and recognize that the present moment is a blessing and is a gift from God for us to make our current situation and our future situation better. And you can't get into better unless you release and believe that the present and the future can be better for yourself. So those are my only closing comments. God bless, and thanks again, sister.
I love you, Elena. Thank you.
I love you too.
This has been totally mind-blowing. I knew it was going to be big. I knew it was going to be major. I knew Jennifer was going to knock the ball out the park, but I am sitting here literally with my mouth hanging open because the nuggets that you dropped for this past hour has been absolutely phenomenal. And for those of you out there who have yet to get your hands on this wonderful, wonderful book, you are missing out on it. Because in this book, it answered so many questions that I had, because like Jennifer said, probably one of the number one questions would be is how do women find themselves in this situation? You know, how does this happen? And my number one question was, you know, why not just leave? And I'm so glad that she covered that in her statements tonight. She also covers this in this book. These 6 ladies in this book went through some things, and it's unimaginable things. And like she said, self-esteem was, you know, one of the number one things that they all had in common. And it's not something that happened, you know, at a certain point. Some of them, it happened in their childhood that led up to them finding themselves in domestic situations. So get your hand on this book. It will open your eyes. I thank God every day that I was not in a domestic violence relationship or situation. So I, unlike Jennifer, can't tell you firsthand what that woman, you know, goes through. I have witnessed it, but this book gives you an insight from the women themselves that lived it. And so if you know someone, if you yourself find yourself in a domestic violence situation, get your hands on this book. Reach out to the agencies that Jennifer mentioned. I will also put a link under this video for the hotlines that you can call that are there for you. You do not have to live in this particular type of situation. There is better out there for you. So please get this book. If you know somebody that's in it, just get the book, hand it to them. You don't even have to explain anything. Just tell them to read this. This is a definite eye opener. I can't say that about a lot of books, but this book here, I am not just saying this because she's on my panel. I'm not saying this because I know her personally. I'm telling you this because as a woman Every woman, whether you're in a domestic situation or not, you need to get this book. It is an eye opener, I'm telling you. So, without further ado, without prolonging this anymore, I do look forward to us having a part 2 to this about domestic violence, because there are some things that I think that we still need to cover. For instance, the cycle. There is an actual cycle of domestic violence. There are hotlines out there. There's a lot of things that we still need to cover. So if it's okay with my panelists, maybe next week, Wednesday at 7:30, we're going to hit you with part 2 of this. There's still so much to cover, and I want to make sure that our listening audience out there and our viewing audience out there get your hands on as much information about this topic as possible. I don't want you to feel like we fell short in any kind of way. I want to make sure that you are well informed, even if it means taking a part 2, which we will do, because I just feel in my heart that it's needed. So please tune in with us next week, which is Wednesday at 7:30, right here at the same place. And I will leave the information and the links on my Facebook fan page, which is located at www.facebook.com/Kimberly Collins, the Educated Natural. Go there, like my page, so that you will be informed as to when the next hangout is going to be, and get the links so you can be ready to rock and roll with us come next week. I thank each and every one of my ladies, both of my Jennifers and Elena, for joining us tonight. Jennifer, you rocked it. I love you dearly. I love each and every one of you dearly. Thank you for tuning in with us tonight. Until next week, everyone, have a great evening, and as always, enjoy your journey.